Hello everybody and welcome to Adobe Live. We would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we are streaming and creating today, and we'd also like to pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. My name is Flynn and I'm here with the fantastic Sophie Elinor. Hi Sophie, how are you?
I'm good, Flynn. How are you?
I'm good. I was saying you're in like a whole totally new location, but you've just pivoted your camera around. That's so cool. I like that.
This is just the other end of my office.
Yeah, it's like keeping everybody on their toes. It's great. Remember in 2020 when everyone was just always like looking at everybody's like space, like
just curving on the background.
Yeah, like are you really wealthy or something, or what's going on there? It was always fun. Remember that? So yes, we had a great stream yesterday. I hope you joined us. If you didn't, you can always watch the replay. We had lots of fun kind of pulling apart Simpsons quotes, doing some like static typography. I think maybe we'll do a little bit of a recap of that, Sophie, before we jump in today. But today, animating in After Effects, which is lots of fun. And like that's like really where your work has transitioned over the years. I mean, it's what you mostly do, what you're mostly well known for, I would say now. Is that fair enough? A fair enough assumption?
Yeah,
you make things wiggle and move?
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite flattered by that description. I'm a wiggler and a mover, and that's what I do. Yeah, so we started yesterday with a bit of goopy sort of hand-drawn lettering. Actually, maybe I can show you a super quick, like 7-second recap that I made last night of where we got to.
I love this.
So it was starting with an existing typeface and then kind of molding it like clay, pushing and pulling it, adding in a few details and ending up with something that was a little bit gross, a little bit villainous, inspired by our inspiration character, Mr. Burns and Hans Moleman. So that's where we were yesterday. But yeah, as you said, today we're going to jump into some motion, and we're going to use one of my favorite tools in After Effects that you and I have chatted about many a time on previous Adobe Lives before, but we're going to use it in a slightly different way today, in a way that is, to me, feels a bit more complex and a bit more dynamic and yeah, just a bit more visually interesting, I think. So okay. This is the sort of example of what we'll be doing, and it's kind of starting with like a bit of an illustration and then sort of like pulling a thread and unraveling that and rearranging it into a different composition. I've done a few of these types of animations over the years. They're quite time consuming, like the setting up of the file can be a little bit of a logistical nightmare, but we'll go through it today. This is another example of that sort of thing where we're sort of moving from type to illustration.
Right.
But, you know, using every single thread to rebuild something.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's like unraveling. So yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's lots of moving parts. This one is a bit more chaotic. This is like the first one of these that I did, 2018 by the looks there.
Wow.
But this was sort of the thing where I realized that I could, sort of extend, I guess, the potential applications of using the trim paths tool in After Effects. So yeah, this is the sort of thing we'll be playing with. And I'm going to jump into Illustrator to start with. Our stream today and yesterday, of course, inspired by The Simpsons, and you had suggested to me the other day that something Milhouse related would be a good sort of
can't go wrong.
Inspiration to start with. Yeah, you can't go wrong with Milhouse. And possibly one of Milhouse's most iconic scenes for Simpsons fans is where he's playing the Bone Storm game.
Yes.
So it's like the latest, hottest video game. It's so incredibly violent. His mum buys it for him and he hasn't even started playing the game yet. He's just entering his name into the like console thing and yeah.
It's almost as good as Lee Carvello's putting challenge.
Almost. It's like a close second.
Yeah.
So I don't think Thrill House comes up in any other episode.
I don't think so. No, I think this is it. Like it's just this
it's
one. It's
another one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, like throwaway lines. No one calls Milhouse Thrill House. Like he's such a dork that that's just the nickname he's given himself. But even then, he can't fit it in.
Yeah, it's perfect.
And so it's this ridiculous throwaway visual joke of there's not enough space to fit the entire Thrill House word within the space, so he just gets Thrill Ho or Thrill How.
Yeah,
which just really speaks to his dorkiness and his inability to fit in, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. It's so good. His attempt at being cool, like going out of his way to be really cool, even though he's by himself, but it still not working.
Yeah. He's on his own. I didn't even think of that. Like, no one is there to see this. He's just like...
Because he doesn't want to share the game later either, so he had no plans on it. It's great. It's perfect.
So yeah, this is our reference material, and I thought we would go from Thrill Ho or Thrill House. Thrill How. And I was trying to rack my brain thinking, what can it transform into? Initially, I was thinking maybe the lines will just zoom off screen, but I had another look at the Bone Storm logo.
Yes.
And I was like, these two fist bumps in the middle would actually be quite a fun thing to transition that into.
Nice.
So that's kind of where I'm at. I've kind of jumped ahead a little bit and I've made a piece of lettering. So it's a bit of a different style to the inspiration, but I figure it's kind of a neon sort of aesthetic. Right. So it's not too far removed. We're not going for this totally like digital clock lettering. So we're sort of taking a bit of creative license. Mm-hmm. But this is our starting lettering. And then
I love the eye. That eye is perfect. Well done.
I had to sneak a little lightning bolt in there. Again, so reference to the sort of lightning happening in the background there.
Perfect.
And then I've just done a quick sort of interpretation of this little fist bump logo in here. So we're going to transform from Thrill How? Do you say Thrill How or Thrill Ho?
I say Thrill How, but I mean...
Thrill How.
That's just how I would say it, but who knows? It could be...
I feel like...
It's just legacy from when I was very young, right? Yeah. Exactly.
Yep. All right, let's go with Thrill How. So we're going from Thrill How to this fist bump situation.
Cool. And this is just created in Adobe Illustrator. Are they objects? Yep. Are they paths? Are they...
So they're outlines.
They're outlines?
So individual strokes. So if I jump back to the Thrill How layer, each of these are separate pieces, which is a key kind of thing in terms of how we're going to transition from one thing to the next.
Right.
So I've sort of broken this up into individual pieces where it made sense. Like the L is one piece, but the H is broken up into three, for example.
Right. So you're kind of thinking already ahead of how this is going to animate. Like, it's not going to be static. So you sort of have to think about that sort of thing, even when you're in Illustrator, right at the beginning, a bit of planning, a bit of trial and error, I suppose, getting to that stage. But yeah, you want to prepare yourself as best you can.
Yeah, and the form has kind of followed the function here a little bit too. Like, I know that I want to be working with trim paths, so I've deliberately kept these as outlines rather than expanding them to shapes.
Yeah.
Which will all make more sense once we dive into After Effects in a second.
Okay.
But I just want to sort of point out as well that the number of lines that make up this Thrill How piece of lettering is the same as the number of lines that make up this illustration. So I think I've got about 15 or 16. Like I've broken this line here into two pieces, you can see, whereas this one I think is just one. So I've just tried to match it so that I've got the same number of bits and pieces in my type piece and my illustration.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Because we need to sort of morph one into the other. So yeah.
Cool.
Now
this is
the kind of the bit where it gets messy. So at the moment I've got my completed Thrill How on one layer. This is a template that I'm going to refer back to, and this is on its own layer. If I switch on, here is where I've actually got all my individual pieces separated out onto different layers. Mm-hmm. If I switch on my first T1, I've called it that layer, for example, you can kind of see that I've taken, if I switch that off again, I've taken this piece of the T here and this sort of shape from the illustration. Mm-hmm. So if I highlight these two, and I've kind of just joined them together with a bit of a flourish in the middle. So if I switch that layer back on, you can kind of see that I've got the start of my, like that's the downward stroke of the T. And this part around here is where the illustration starts, but I've kind of extended beyond, it's gone on a bit of a detour, and then it's come back into the final shape of the illustration.
Okay, yeah.
Are you with me?
I'm with you. I know what you've done. I don't know why you've done it. But so yeah, cool. Let's go. Let us know, chat, if you want anything further. But I think it might be a proof in the pudding kind of thing. Like once we start getting things moving, say, hey, remember how we did that? Yeah. So I'm with you. If
I switch these two reference layers off and I go through and piece by piece kind of show you, you can see that that's like the crossbar of the T that's turning into the little spike on the bracelet, I guess, again with this little sort of detour moment in the middle. If we kind of refer back to this guy here, you can kind of see that, like if you just pick one line to follow any of these lines, you'll see that they go on a bit of a wander and then they form the final shape.
Right.
So that's sort of what I'm aiming for here. Now, when I turn on all of these layers, it's going to look like an absolute mess. And it is.
It's just crazy.
And we're
spaghetti.
done. Don't you love it? So yeah, it will make sense once we take it into After Effects, which why don't we do that now so that what I've just explained can kind of be shown in practice a little bit.
So you've already brought this in, but do you mind just telling us or showing us how you would import it?
Yeah, totally. So just file, import file. And then just kind of navigating to where it is. I think that's my file there.
Normal AI
It's just
file.
an Illustrator file. I haven't done anything fancy to it. I would import it as composition rather than as footage, which it defaults to.
Right.
I don't need footage because it's just an Illustrator file. So I just switch it to composition and retain layer sizes and then create composition. And then that's our little composition up here.
Perfect.
And I've just sort of jumped ahead and created shape layers out of the pieces that we'll be manipulating today.
Cool.
Which, if you want to do that, you just right-click, create shapes from vector layer. I haven't converted my two template layers because they're purely there for visual reference. I don't need to manipulate them at all. So I've just left those as Illustrator layers rather.
Okay. Makes sense.
So, and looking like a really hot mess at the moment, I'm going to switch off everything except my top layer here, and we're just going to work on that one to start with. I'm going to keep my two sort of, my Thrill How, you're going to say Thrill Ho, my Thrill How and our fist bump illustration layers just as a guide. And we're going to drop down into this first layer and add our trusty friend, a trim path. Now, at the moment, if you're not familiar with trim paths, basically it will hide and reveal certain parts of an outline layer, which is really good for like if you're trying to make it look like script writing that's being drawn kind of thing, or just outlines kind of being drawn on. We're going to use it in a slightly different way. So at the moment, without having sort of manipulated anything here, this entire layer is showing. But what I really want is for only the part that is in the T to be visible in the first instance. So to do that, not the end, we're going to pull back the start layer a tiny bit, and I might just zoom in here so we can get a close-up on where we want to finish. Purely just eyeballing this. I don't have exact numbers for everything because it's going to change depending on the letter. So now that that's kind of sitting exactly where the downward stroke of the T is, I'm just going to drop a couple of keyframes and sort of lock that into position. Now I'm going to jump forward a few frames, zoom out a little bit. Now we want the end. No, we want the start to be at 0. We want the end to kind of pull And again, now I'm looking at my pink reference layer underneath because we're kind of going from lettering to illustration.
Yeah.
And probably about there is pretty good, I think. So yeah, now we're going from, and I'm hoping it'll become clear sort of where we're headed with this, just based off this little example.
Yeah.
So we're starting with the T, downward stroke. It's going to have a little bit of a loop-de-loop off in space and then come back to rest in the final position of our illustration.
Cool. It makes sense. So like, because you've got the start and the end point, which is your template, your templated words and what you've brought in, and then you're sending it on a bit of a journey to get there. And so you know exactly where the start point is, exactly where the end is, and because you've made that path, it kind of just travels along.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it's already kind of a little bit interesting with that bit of movement. There's a bit of this kind of overlap happening here, which I don't necessarily want. And I can just tinker with the sort of positioning of these start and end points here to make sure I'm not getting lines crossing over each other.
Right.
There will be quite a lot going on once we start to apply this effect to all the other letters. So just kind of keeping it clean where we can. Is going to sort of help. Like as you're going, rather than coming back and cleaning up, it's going to be hard to notice things because it's going to be a hot mess for a while. Yeah. Yeah. That's it. And then the final thing we'll do here is just highlight all of those keyframes, right click, and then add a bit of easy ease so that our movement is looking a little bit smoother. And we can probably actually slow that down a few frames, I reckon. That's kind of feeling a bit better. In easy ease, for those that might not know what that is, can you explain what that is? What was that? Yeah, so if I undo that and just go back to our regular sort of default keyframes, it's moving, like the speed of the animation is happening at it's happening at a constant speed the whole time. Yeah. So if we go into our speed graph, which is this little guy here, the graph editor, you can see that it's a straight line between start and finish. So we're going at 10 Ks an hour the whole time or something like that. If we switch it to easy ease, what that is doing is the movement is starting slower, it's speeding up in the middle and then slowing down towards the end, which looks like an S-curve if you view that speed on a graph. Right. Pretty rarely do I want something that is moving at a linear speed. There are very few things in real life that would move at a total constant speed without changing at all. Almost everything would have, it might start a bit slower, build momentum, and then kind of slow, like ease off towards the end. Yeah. So it just makes the movement feel, I don't know, I picture it like that Salt Bay guy, where it's just like sprinkling a bit of pizzazz on the movement, Yeah, makes sense. It's just, smoothing it out, making it feel a little more polished and a little more, more of a believable movement, I suppose. Cool. And now we just do that 15 more times, basically. Right. So I might switch that layer off and just go to the next one and kind of, just so I can see it in isolation. I don't want everything kind of happening at once. It'll get a little bit confusing. And unfortunately, you can't just sort of copy and paste. That was my next question. Can you copy the attributes and just paste them and then kind of use that as a starting point? You could, but I feel like that would almost be more confusing because like we're going to, 65% of this shape here is not going to be the same as, like, they're all different lengths, they're different sizes. Mm-hmm. So I think it probably is just easier to kind of eyeball each one as we go. And get a feel for it as well. Like sometimes you try to do those things and they end up being more trouble than it's worth. Yeah. But yeah, so now I'm just kind of doing the same process as before, and these might need a little bit of adjusting once we kind of come to the end. I might actually Yeah, maybe I'll come back. Maybe we'll just sort of push through and come back and apply ease and adjust those kind of keyframes as we go, just so we can kind of get a bit more of a sense of how this is going to look. Because some of these shapes are really confusing to see in isolation.
Right. Because you got that flourish that throws it off a bit.
Yeah, and there's sort of lots of overlapping that happens with those flourishes as well. Yeah, like I said, a lot of the sort of where does that guy end? I need to turn this off to see. Okay. Yeah, there'll be some adjusting that needs to kind of happen at the end in terms of the timing of all of this. We probably don't want it all happening at exactly the same time. But we can come back to that as we go.
I used that comment that you made. You made that comment a while ago with animation about how it's, I think you may have said that at the beginning of your career you were doing that. You kind of almost treating it like music, like everything sort of had to happen on the beat. I don't know if you use that terminology, but then you sort of realized that things don't happen. It's much better if things kind of don't happen and they're a little bit off, and you kind of play with it until you kind of get it right. And I was doing some very basic Photoshop animation. I was like, I remember someone said on Adobe Live not to do everything right at the same time. And as soon as I remembered that, everything kind of came together.
A very wise person once said.
That's right. That's exactly what I said.
What were you making?
Oh, just like an animated GIF. Like, really, that's all it was. But it had the background animating in the foreground as well, so I kind of offset it a little bit, and it made it look a little bit more natural and a little bit less kind of like it just 1 2 1 2.
Yeah.
Without adding like huge file size or having to do like a blurred transition or it be an MP4, it could still be a GIF, but it's just looked like there was a bit more going on.
It's simple. Amazing. Yes, it is simple, but it's amazing the difference that just kind of offsetting your movements can make. Massive difference.
I've come prepared with Simpsons trivia for you.
Oh, hell yeah. Lay it on me. What do you got?
All right. Marge painted several portraits of which Beatle member she had a schoolgirl crush on?
It was Ringo, wasn't it?
It was Ringo. Correct.
Yeah. Wait, you said trivia. This is a pop quiz test.
It's trivia. It's trivia. It says trivia on the website I have open. So I can kind of keep them coming, and then we can stop to kind of explain what we're doing as well. But I knew there's quite a lot of steps in After Effects where we're kind of doing a similar sort of thing. So you let me know when you're ready for another trivia question, and pause for I've got them ready to roll.
I think that's what am I working on here? What is this? Okay, with it now. See, even I get confused, and I drew this morning and I'm like, what am I doing?
Right. Yeah.
Which is why having those sort of base layers and in different colors too, like is very, very useful.
Could you do each like letter in a different color, or would that be too much of a hassle?
Yeah, I mean, I probably could have.
Or like offset them, so like one's red and then the next one's, I don't know, grey, and then red then grey, then red then grey, and the background's just the same one colour.
That might have made it a little bit easier to see with the benefit of hindsight. Next time on Adobe Live.
Next time.
We will do that for sure. I can kind of sort of see what I'm doing here, but probably a few more colors. Or maybe that would have just been, I don't know, maybe that would have been a lot to look at too.
Maybe that's even more confusing, right?
Sometimes I'll be in the middle of a project. Like, can I show you the work? I just want to quickly show you the working file for this one. So I had my starting letters, again, like my two little template layers here. but I just want to show you like what this file looked like before I started animating it.
All right.
And I did this not knowing that it was really going to work. Like, I sort of feel like it will come together, but I just need to fully make it a mess beforehand. And I'm looking at this file going, I hope what I've done is going to make sense, because it really, like, I'm losing faith in it kind of halfway.
You got to believe in yourself for sure for this type of work.
Yeah, very much trusting the process with this one. But I think, yeah, if you can kind of wrap your head around just the initial file setup and breaking up your starting piece into pieces that you can then sort of transform into something else, just kind of the mental gymnastics of that, I feel like, is almost the hardest bit, because what we're doing now is really quite repetitive, and not terribly difficult. We're just kind of following a map, really. But I think that's probably also one of the big things with animation, is that sometimes it's not very hard. The bigger thing is more just like the patience required to see it through.
Yeah, you got to have the vision, I guess, at the start as well, and you got to know how to do it once. But it's the repetitive side of it, and I get that, and I think a lot of like design or creation is like that. Like illustrating can be a little bit like that once you get to like the coloring in phase. And it's like you've got your outlines, you've set your file up correctly, and it's like, cool, now it's color and then shadow, and you kind of don't really need to think about like anything until you get to shadow, really. Like, I'm not saying that coloring is easy, it's not, but you can put the base colors down, and then the color theory can come through. You can kind of change it as you go. If you're using Photoshop or Illustrator or some sort of digital art where you can change the color willy-nilly, it's but you got to get it right. But you can sit there and do some coloring in for a little bit.
And a little bit is usually like 4 or 5 hours.
Right. Yeah. It could be super complicated. Yeah.
90% of which is making the most tiny, minuscule changes.
Right.
And then going back and then trying again and then being like, is it better or worse? I can't tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
I spend a lot of time what feels like staring into the void of an animation that's like 90% finished, just watching it play on loop going, is that right?
Yeah.
I just need to be offset a little.
You must really have to
something not quite right.
Walk away and come back, right, with one of these things. I know that's a good trick for everything, but you must really have to do that when you've been in the file, like within there for quite a long time, because it is a lengthy process, right? Like keyframe animation and trial and error and things like that.
Yeah, lots of trial and error for sure. And like 30 different drafts of any project, just in case. Just in case draft 21 was the one.
What do you do for storage? Do you have storage issues? Do you have to like be very careful with file management? I know it's not like everyone's favorite topic, but it's like, because I've become a mess. I'm usually very good, but over time things have gotten out of control.
This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and also the bane of my goddamn existence.
Right.
Like, particularly with any sort of like video editing or like stop motion work where there's like tons of photos.
Yeah. And
the file size just gets like way too heavy too quickly. My scratch discs are constantly full.
Right.
Like I'm always like
go back and delete something just so you can render something. Yeah.
Yeah. Like nightclub rules, 1 out, 1 in kind of thing. Just trying to clear space.
I like that nightclub rules. I'm gonna steal that one.
But in very exciting news, a friend of mine who knows much more about file storage and like networks and that kind of thing has helped me like buy a bunch of storage that he's going to set up and build like a home server for me. Right. I'm sort of at that point where I've got a drawer full of external hard drives.
Yeah.
Stuff's kind of all over them. Mm-hmm. My laptop is full and
they fail as well. The external hard drives can just not work. So I've had that happen before.
Yeah. So literally yesterday morning, before I jumped on the stream, I like hit purchase on a bunch of
Is it like a RAID storage? Do you know what it is? You can say I don't know.
I don't know enough about any of this. I got sent a list of things that I will need. I'm like, cool. It will be built into some sort of system that will house all of my things, and I will no longer have the dreaded scratch disks a full error message when I'm trying to open like a 4 gigabyte Photoshop file.
Sounds good.
What do you do? Are you sort of at the point that I'm at where you've just got like hard drives all over the place?
Yeah, I got stuff all over the place because I have PC and also have my laptop, and the laptop is Mac and the PC is PC. And then I just went through, I'm not even quite finished going through the process of moving my like Google Workspace away from one workspace to another. And that's been like months, like trying to figure it out to the point where I've had to like be on the phone to Google and using chat, and I'm pretty techie. And
how does one phone call to Google?
Yeah, you have to go through a lot of series of steps where they're like, actually, it would be more convenient for us if you call us because we can't figure this out, and you're annoying.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a lot of screenshots and literally sending screen recordings in chat before they eventually went, okay, let's just talk on the phone. Can I call you?
Wow.
And it was just ridiculous stuff. I won't whinge about it too much. I love Google, by the way. Like, it's so affordable for what it can do. But moving was such a hassle, and the poor person trying to figure it out for me. So yeah, there's kind of stuff all over the shop. I'm hoping by the end of the year to consolidate everything. But I'm fine with like file management for anything static or business related, invoices, emails, that sort of stuff.
Still pretty lightweight.
But video, I really struggle with because
video is the killer.
I'm sourcing a file from like Dropbox, and then I'm sourcing a file from my desktop, and then I try to move everything and everything breaks, and I'm like, oh, I really need to get better at this.
Yeah. And it's, especially if you're using like raw footage for things, you're like, I probably don't need most of this, but what if I need some of it?
Yeah.
I don't want to delete all of the, so I'm like very excited about this new storage.
Yeah.
That I'm going to have one day soon.
That's what we need, like the AI gods to focus on, I think. Like something like that, like press the button and it's like, would you like us to consolidate your entire system using this mode or something? Like as if you did that from the start. Like that would be amazing. Like imagine if it was like, these are your personal emails, these are your work emails. Like you haven't never used this file. Like all this stuff is video files. All of these, like none of these files have dependencies on any of your After Effects or Premiere profiles, or projects or something. Do you want to review like a short version of them and archive them for like a year, and then we'll delete them after that, or something like that? Incredible. I would
pay all of my money
top dollars
for a system like that.
Right.
I would give my soul for something that could deal with that kind of tedious, like file management stuff.
What about you, chat? What do you think about file management?
We've somehow managed to take like the most exciting to us anyway, like Simpsons topic and really dry it out with this file management chat.
That was my bad. I took it,
No. I ran with it also.
It's funny stuff like that. It's like some of the most important things, like seriously, about like being a creative, particularly being an independent creative, is like business skills, invoicing, like understanding like how to, payment, whatever, payment system that you're in, depending on your country. Like for us, it's like understanding GST or understanding super or understanding, tax and stuff like that. Talking to clients, like quoting and stuff, but no one ever wants to talk about it. It's like too boring, not interested.
It's certainly not like the content I'm getting served on Instagram.
Yeah, not a lot of TikTok stuff on how to lodge your ATO correctly. Hi guys. As you dance.
Coming to you live from bass season. Like, woo!
Oh yeah, bass. Thanks for the reminder.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Yeah, back to okay, Simpsons trivia.
Please steer
Here you
this
go.
ship on course.
Let's go. What was the air date of the first episode of The Simpsons? These are always so
Oh.
tough.
Like, do you want a day of the week? Like
No,
in a
like
month, or just a year?
Just a year.
I think, was it 89?
Oh my goodness.
I only know this because they're up to season 34. And I've worked backwards.
Oh, you just work backwards. That's genius. It's absolutely genius. I love it.
And I'm assuming they didn't take any years off in the middle. I'm pretty sure it's just been running the whole time.
Yeah.
Is that true?
I think so.
They've just never taken a holiday?
Yeah, I don't think they ever have. I think they just kept moving.
Truly remarkable longevity. Is it holding some sort of record now in terms of like?
Must be longest running animated series at least.
Surely it's got to be up there.
Yeah, it's got to be. I always just think about like when they did the clip show, which is a great episode if you remember that. It's hosted by Troy McClure, and the whole thing's a clip show. But they obviously like they did do clip stuff, but they made all that new content for it, so it was kind of making fun of people who make clip shows.
Yeah.
And he's talking about that they'll continue to run. They're like, we'll keep running this show until it's no longer profitable. Another little throwaway thing, but it's like, yep, pretty true. It'll just keep going until it's no longer profitable.
I meant to tell you too, I watched the episode that you mentioned yesterday that Krusty runs for Congress. I watched that last night because I was like, I couldn't remember it. Felt like a real blind spot. And it was like season 14 or something. It was like quite late.
Yeah, it's pretty
so
late.
Maybe I had dropped off by then, or it was one of the episodes that I only watched like 5 times instead of 100 times.
100, yeah.
Could be why it didn't stick in my head. But yeah, the scene you were describing with the the political debate kind of televised thing was
and they end it with an ad for Krusty. Like it's it's just beautiful.
So good. So I've kind of got all of my trim paths for each letter working now, and I really came together a lot faster than I was anticipating. So now I'm just kind of going back through layer by layer and just sort of, you can see I'm adjusting the keyframes. Some of the lines are a bit shorter than others, so the speed's a bit off. So when it's a shorter line, I'm kind of bringing the keyframes in, or if it's a really long sort of wandering line, then I'm dragging them out a little bit just so that there's a kind of consistent speed.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah, so it doesn't look like something's going faster than the others.
Yeah, they're all kind of traveling roughly the same sort of speed. A bit of variation is fine, but I don't want one to look like, tediously slow or ridiculously fast kind of thing. That one is one that has got quite a journey to go on, so we might slow that one down a little bit. Feels better.
Had a question before that I missed because we were too busy talking about invoicing. Would these base layers be the equivalent of onion skinning? So I think we're talking about the
pretty much. Yeah, so it's your starting point and your end point, and we're just doing the in-between frames. That's a really good analogy there.
Nice.
I think it's like, is it position to position animation, or it's got like a specific name where you've got your starting point and your end point and you're just kind of working between them.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Just bring this guy back a little bit. These two ends are getting a little bit close there.
Oh yeah, we had another question. You sketch so well digitally. Nice little comment there. But do you keep and enjoy using a sketchbook?
Yeah, I was thinking about that recently, actually. I love a sketchbook. I really do love a sketchbook. It's so nice flipping back through and just kind of seeing, I would pretty rarely go back through old digital files and see all those different iterations, whereas I quite enjoy flicking through a sketchbook. So much of what I do is primarily digital based these days, though. So the sketchbook is getting a little dusty in the drawer at the moment. But I think it depends on the project. Like if I was doing something that required like maybe a bit of brush lettering or something that's like inky with like a lot of texture that I couldn't easily kind of whip up in Illustrator, then I might start pen on paper or ink on paper. It's kind of, if we're just doing this sort of, mono weight sans serif lettering, it's pretty easy to just jump straight into Illustrator with that. But if I was doing something that was like, black letter that required like quite a specific pen nib and process that really starts on paper and is informed by the pen, by the actual tool, then I would probably preference starting with a sketchbook then.
Cool.
Yeah.
If you go traveling, would you take a sketchbook or something like that? Or are you just like, I don't want to do any design work, I'm on a break? Which is perfectly fine.
Yeah, I pretty rarely take a sketchbook traveling with me. I think because I spend so much of my weekends and evenings and whatnot just like creating stuff.
Yeah.
If I'm going on a trip, I might take an iPad maybe. But I probably wouldn't take a sketchbook with me. Yeah. But then I always love seeing people who do take sketchbooks. Like there's an animator I follow who is constantly just like sketching people on the train and like she'll
I feel like I'd end up in prison if I did that. I feel like that's like can't imagine doing that. I don't even talk to people in public that I don't know because I'm like, no. No photos.
It does err on the side of pervy a little bit, doesn't it?
I think some people can get away with it. I just don't feel confident that I don't know. I feel like I do it 100 times and then there'd be one too many or something. Like I get the wrong person, wrong situation. And be like, why did I bring my pen and paper?
Sketchpad always get me into trouble.
Creepy guy on the train with the sketchpad, just like wanted posters just throughout like your train trip line, and then you never caught the train again.
I think the animator I'm thinking of does maybe doesn't ask for permission, but just makes it very obvious that that's what she's doing, so that it's like
there's got to be an art to it for sure.
Clear sort of I definitely don't think it's the sort of thing you could just try and do on the down low.
Because I feel like it'd be nice to ask permission at the beginning, but then you're not going to get that natural thing, right? And then also
someone's going to be really painfully aware of it, right?
And then they're trying to kind of pose, or they're feeling very uncomfortable, or they just straight up say no because they're like, well, I don't know. But often you see that like on social media, they'll obviously draw themselves sketching and then they'll show the person, they're like, oh my God, like that's me, that's amazing, thank you so much, and they'll give it to them.
I don't buy those.
No, you don't buy them
for a second.
Yeah.
Nah, there's no way they haven't noticed. There's no way they haven't got permission, first of all. Like
you've become an internet cynic like the rest of us. Yeah, it's like, it can't be real. Don't believe it.
Nice if it was true, but I imagine there would be like if you didn't want to be drawn, surely that for every handful of the ones that go well, there's someone that's like, why were you staring at me this whole train?
Maybe they just don't make it to the internet, right? We've got about 10 minutes left, by the way.
Beautiful.
We have been chatting. Reverb Mike on presumably on YouTube has said, we used to use the write-on effect with brushes before there was trim paths in After Effects.
I have had a bit of a play with that, but I think I never quite got my head around it. But I think, is that where you would just kind of paint live and it would almost like a screen recording kind of map the placement of the artwork? Is that, have I sort of got that?
I don't know it. I'm not familiar with it. But Mike, if you want to clarify, let us know. But presumably they would use trim paths now for this kind of thing. It's obviously a much faster way to do it, presumably.
This is always the sort of scary moment. We've added trim paths to every single layer.
Mm-hmm.
It might need a bit of fine tuning and we haven't added ease yet, but this is always kind of the moment where I'm like, did this actually work?
Did it work? Okay.
So I'm reassured by the fact that at least our starting position is correct.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna, shall I hit the space bar and we'll just see? I feel like we need like a drum roll or something to
drum roll I do not have.
Okay, we'll just like, yeah, mentally get a little bit of a drum roll happening. Okay. Anticipation. I'm gonna hit the space bar and fingers crossed.
Here we go.
This is
I can
transform into Everyone cross your fingers. All right, let's do it. Hey! Okay. All right. That's something. Let's add some ease because the movement is very stilted at the moment. Just going to highlight everything. We can do all this at once. Add a bit of ease in there. All right. Okay, this last bit here, I feel like this line here is kind of dragging the chain a little bit. It's happening a little bit too slowly. So let's go and find you. What are you starting as? This is the bit where it becomes a little bit confusing when you're having to dig back through your files and kind of find the outlier. I think that's it there, and I think that's because I've got that point way too far out there.
This is like the fine tuning.
Yeah. Now that all looks quite fast to me, so I might just grab all of our tail end keyframes and just kind of bring this out a little bit. I think that feels a little bit better. And what I might also do, now that we've kind of got, like, this is draft 1. So this is kind of the point at which I will now go back and like fine tune maybe all of these starting points. We probably don't want everything happening. Like at the moment, we've kind of got the exact same starting point for everything. Like all of our starting keyframes are in a line, which is making it feel quite, I don't know, it's a lot happening at once and it's hard to take it in. Right. So if we kind of stagger that movement a little bit, we can soak it in a little bit more and appreciate all of the different line work that's happening.
Even the start point, you might just slightly have them all, like not all of them, but stagger a few of them, stagger 50%. I don't know, is there like a...
Let's stagger all of them. Let's kind of just like bump everything, maybe 2 frames each. I'm hoping that with the way that I have set this file up, because I've got like, it's going in the order of the letters. So we've got T1, T2, right. H1, H2. So I kind of want the letters to form in order of the word. Like, so the word is being spelled. Yeah. Actually, like no, that doesn't make sense because that's what it is. Thank you.
I got you. And I noticed that to stagger all these along, you've selected all of them and then you're going through and moving everything two like notches and then deselecting the row and then moving everything 2. So that's going to give you that like everything's moved forward by 2 effect.
That's it.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like it. Nice.
So this is kind of, it's giving us a little bit more, we can kind of follow the animation as it's happening rather than just being completely inundated with 1,000 things happening at once. So like if you were watching this, you might, I don't know, maybe pick one line to kind of follow and just sort of see where it ends up. I think that's the thing that I really like about this type of animation is that, you can watch it once and kind of get the gist, but if you watch it over and over again, you can you'll pick up something different every time because you can't just take absolutely everything in on the first viewing.
I think it made a huge difference staggering it along for this.
Yeah. definitely.
Like I didn't know that's like it needed that or anything, but it makes such a difference as soon as you see it. It's
yeah,
very cool.
It kind of gives it that sort of that anticipation overall as well.
Yeah,
because you're kind of seeing it unravel and reform, and you're like, oh, where is this heading? And then it's kind of the reward at the end of it. It's turned into something completely different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think from here, what I would probably do is, maybe tinker with the placement of some of these things a little bit. I can see there's like a few areas in here that are getting a little bit muddied just because lines are overlapping. So I might spend a bit of time kind of just finessing that a little bit. There's also maybe a few areas where I haven't quite got the start and end point of the trim paths exact. Like I'm just looking at, for example, this little area here. There's like a bit of an overlap there, really minor stuff. And then I think similar to, if we jump back to our sort of starting reference, there's just a really slight movement on those clouds happening at the start before they unravel and reform. I think it'd be kind of cool if maybe if the fists kind of do a little
bump,
like they move, potentially. I think that might be something that will just bring a bit of extra dimension to this as we go. I'm not totally sure. Oh, we might be able to do it pretty easy. No, we don't want that piece. Yeah, cool. Okay, let's just
we got about 3 minutes left of being able to make these fist bump. Just by the way, just giving you a heads up, we'll push it as long as we can.
Beautiful. So I would just kind of highlight each section, and then maybe drop a keyframe on the position property, and then move it in a little bit. And so that's just gonna again apply ease to all of this to make it a little bit more seamless, and then maybe kind of pull back again so we get a little bit of that kind of coming in and bouncing back out. And I think when it bounces back out is when I might unravel it back into the starting lettering.
Cool.
And I would do that by basically just copying these keyframes. This is where we can kind of work smarter, not harder. Is that the phrase?
Yep. Smarter, not harder. I know. I've been doing it. I thought the phrase was the other way around, and I've been doing that my whole life.
No. You've been working harder? Damn it. I would
got that quote wrong, like when I was 18, and then it's just been downhill. Uphill. See?
I would just copy those keyframes to return back to the starting point. I probably would, we're kind of doing a bit of a boomerang where we're just sort of returning the same way that we arrived. But I would try and make that a little bit different by changing the timing of these things. So maybe making that happen a bit faster. Again, if we look at this reference here, it's a slow build into the lettering. And then when it dissolves back again, it's much faster. So even though it is kind of a bit of a cheat, it still feels like a different motion.
Yeah.
At the end. That
makes sense. Yep.
Yeah. So that's, I feel like that's, once I kind of apply that position change to our other fist, I feel like we're going to have quite an interesting do our little fist bump and then come back again.
That's awesome. Well, I don't think we're going to have time to do that live today. I think we're going to have to call it there. But awesome. Like, just had a wonderful time hanging out with you again, as always, Sophie. And thank you everybody who joined us in chat, Mike and Ahmad and Johanna and anybody else that was watching. Hope you got a bit out of that. If you missed the first session that we did with Sophie, you can go and check that out on Behance. Might be a little bit hard to find on Behance at the moment, so why don't you go to our YouTube channel and check it out. But Sophie, as always, so much fun to hang out with you, and we learned so much from you. So thank you for joining us on Adobe Live.
Truly, it's always such a pleasure, Flynn. I have the best time.
Awesome. Well, we'll be back actually on Friday. Johanna and I will be having a little bit of our Firefly Friday mashup, a little bit of an experimentational stream that we do. So jump on over there and hang out with us then. But everybody and Sophie, thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Catch you later.
Bye.